What is good, guys? So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down a really wacky, kind of experimental and just weird sample that I made like a week ago. And this sample literally incorporates sounds from an office building, as well as like a weird janky lead. And then this kind of like drum section that I included. So it's a very strange sample, but I'm going to break it down, go over all the effects, VSTs and plugins that I used. And if you want this exact same sample, you can check out my Discord below. I'm posting all of my samples there. So let's get into it. And firstly, just keep in mind that this whole project is pitched up 2 semitones on the master bus. So this is what the intro sounds like. I don't know what genre this is, and if you know, then please tell me. But this is how it all came about. So something I started doing recently, and I'm telling you this is some game because I don't know why I never thought to do this before, but I took a one shot and it was this Plucky 2, I can't even remember what kit it was from, and I basically put it into the sampler as a one shot, and this is what it sounded like without any plugins. So you can hear that the rhythm is almost a bit off, like the tempo that the one shot was originally recorded at would have been something different. So I've mentioned this before, but how I kind of enforce more rhythm to things that are a little bit off time without like having to like pull and stretch the audio files too much is, firstly I added the saturation, but I used halftime with a full wet mix as well as some compression, and then now it sounded like this. Oh man, that is so cool to me. And you might need headphones to hear these low notes on the E, but basically that's what I got, and I bounced it out. And then all I did then is pitch it up 5 semitones using the sound shifter. And then it sounded like this. I feel like it's some kind of like melody you could hear in a club with like, you know, kind of like a hip hop banger. And I just had that little kind of like chop at the end just for a little like stutter effect. So it's just a cool little like rhythmic little ear candy before the main drop. So the office textures basically came from Splice, and they were literally just a bunch of weird office sounds that I chopped up, moved around and added them all together. And without any plugins, they sound like this. And I'll play it with a metronome just for context. Like, that is pretty cool to me. And I've said this before, but I'm really trying to incorporate more real world sounds because it gives it this kind of like organic texture to your samples that you just wouldn't have otherwise. And there's something I think very familiar when we hear those real life kind of ambiences. So I added the DH flanger just to make it sound a bit wavier, a bit wider. I added some compression and I added EQ, cutting out most of the lows, and then some RC20 as I like to do. And I didn't do too much to that. That's just the default. And then I've also pitched this one up 5 semitones, the same as the first layer, and then added even more compression because they're, you know, they're small kind of like rhythmic ambient sounds. I wanted to really compress them and have them like kind of be a bit in your face, especially because it's competing with a pretty like wacky and like dynamic melody. So yeah, together I just feel like they complemented in a really interesting way. And now into the next section, we have this crazy lead. So kind of crazy, and this lead came from Splice as well. Honestly, call it cheating, but I did add quite a few effects to this. So this is what the original sounded like without any plugins. I probably just time stretched it a little bit. A real kind of like EDM type of lead, but I mentioned this also in my last video, is trying to take things from different genres, different places. So I've got office building sounds and I've got like EDM leads happening in what is kind of meant to still be like a hip hop sample. So I think it worked really well. And what I did was I took that, I pitched it up 7 semitones. So now it's like this. So really high, but then to bring it down and bring in those low end textures, I've added halftime with pretty much a full wet mix. So pretty glitchy. And then I've got a bunch of reverb as well with a very short delay, but a high mix. And also I brought the width down so it sounds a bit closer, more intimate, and EQing out a lot of the highs just so it's not so washed out and taking up like so much of the frequency range. I wanted to contain it a little bit, so. And then adding some EQ, cutting out a lot of the lows. And then the 4th shape pan. And then more compression, and then kind of made it a bit wider as well. So ended up sounding like this together. And then lastly, I just have these little perk hits just for a little bit more rhythm as the office sounds come back in, and without any plugins, they just sound like this. Just a very simple kind of like percussive knock. And all I've done is pitch these up 4 semitones and then added more compression, multi-band compression as well, boosting up those highs, added even more compression, and then some EQ, cutting out a lot of the lows, and just again making sure it kind of really becomes a bold sound, even though initially it's just like a small percussive block or like note hit. So yeah, that's just the way I make those kind of things stand out. Even if they begin as a very small percussive element, I still want it to like cut through the mix. So that's why I've added a lot of compression there. And so leading into the next section, we have the same kind of like bubbly main melody, but this is a variation. So. And it's about to go into this crazy drum section. And honestly, this was me just kind of like getting a bit lost in the composition and just having fun with rhythm, because it's not often I add like actual drums, 808 sounds and stuff like that in my samples. Yeah, so I'm going to play you just the drum elements, and basically it was a weird mix of like dubsteppy sounds and as well as like the 808 and stuff, so they sound like this together. So off the bat, basically what I have is an 808. I have this like dubsteppy kind of bass that moves around a lot because of some panning I've added, and I've got these like breath textures which sound like this. Like, I just think that's so cool. It cuts through. And then I've also got this. So let's just start with this layer. I can't remember where I got this, but without any plugins, it's basically just a kind of like bass sound. I think this was actually from my Moog grandmother. I could be wrong. Can't remember where I got it. But then I've pitched it up 4, added some compression, some delay, some EQ, cutting up cutting out up to 250 hertz. So now it sounds like this. And especially because there's a delay, I don't want that to bleed into the low end, especially because I've got an 808, I've got basses happening. Those are going to take up the low end, the low frequencies. So any kind of like melodic percussive elements, I want to stay above the sort of 250, 300, 400 hertz and onwards, because otherwise it's just going to get too muddy. And to be honest, it already was bordering muddy in this mix. So yeah, the 808 was something I just took a one shot from, and then I added some saturation, and basically this is what it played. So just kind of like a bouncy rhythm. And then the whispers. So again, these are actually the same sample, but one's just pitched higher than the other, and they sound like this. So the one that's pitched higher, you can hear has that delay on it. And I can almost guarantee I'm cutting out like all the lows. Yeah, just so the separation, a bit more of a call and response, because one's taking up the lows, one's taking up the highs. These are the really cool, like kind of like dubstep sounds that I found again off of Splice. And I did a lot of like messing around and chopping and trying to get the call and responses correct. And all I did was pitch these up 6 semitones so it would match the project tempo. Added some multi-band compression, trying to like take away some of the lows just because I have that 808 playing. And even though you can see I've kind of tried not to have the 808 like clash with these, you know, again, you can see there's kind of like this call and response happening. I just want to make sure it's at least a little bit tidy and not muddying up the low end too much. I've also got this pancake on 100% mix on the fast to low preset, and this just means that they're moving around, and I thought that really made this sample a lot more dynamic and just, you know, sonically interesting. Cutting out up to 250 hertz on these as well, because I just found they were a bit muddy otherwise, so it sounds like this. So with a metronome as well. And then over here. Yep, so with the 808. So you can kind of hear that call and response happening. And the 808 sounds a little bit not the cleanest, probably because I pitched up this project. And I do find that often when I do pitch the master, it does tend to affect the basses, sub basses, synth basses, 808s a bit, kind of makes them sound a little bit, you know, distorted and like some weird harmonics, but it still sounded good to me. I didn't do too much here, you can see with the EQ. And yeah, it was just kind of like a cool, fun call and response section. And I don't know if I missed this texture out. What's this? Oh, this is that same percussive hit. So yeah, just like a fun section. Honestly, I was messing around, so that's why I've got basically the same melodic section at the first half, just without the drums. You know, it's up to a producer whether or not they want to use it. I have that lead come back in, and the office textures, again, just chopped up, keeping that initial rhythm and kind of rhythmic motif, and then back into the main melody, just for a simple outro. A little chop here. So yeah, that's the sample, and like I said, it's one of the more unique ones that I have made, and it's just been so much fun to mess around with different genres and sounds from different environments in real life, textures, elements that you just wouldn't expect. I think this is how us as sample makers and producers really help push sounds forward and keep the new waves coming by introducing fresh sounds and sonics that we just haven't gotten used to hearing yet. So don't be afraid to experiment. Try and take elements from all kinds of genres. Take vocal samples from languages you've never even heard before. you know, take a kalimba, take a marimba, take a cowbell, you know, take an instrument that you've also never heard of before and try and incorporate it into your samples. I promise it will keep you inspired and have you coming up with new sounds and waves that no one else is on. So that's something I'm trying to experiment with a lot more. Hopefully this helped you in just giving you some ideas of how I go about making unique samples. So if you want this exact sample, just click the link below. You can join the Discord. I post all my samples, my loops on there. Oh, and real quick, my final plug of this video, I've got a crazy sound kit coming out for all you sample makers. This is full of insane textures and phrases that I've spent literally months, so many long days and sessions running old samples, new samples, already existing phrases of mine through this hologram microcosm and getting even crazier sounds, which I've already been using for these samples, and you'll see more of them coming up soon. But if you want this kit, it's going to be announced very soon. It's probably going to be out in the next couple weeks. Once it's out, it'll be in the link below. Right, see you in the next one. Peace.